So the Irene dress has been on my list for a long time. I have been wanting to get it and to make it just as a regular dress to have. You would also know that I've been wanting this pattern for a while if you saw my TikTok where I made a video about it. And it's also in the fall pattern guide. All those patterns are like patterns that I've been wanting or things that are really good for colder weather. And if you live in an area like me where there are 4 seasons, there are very few months where it is just blazing hot. So those patterns can be used literally for all year. The one thing I can say that I did like about this was that if you have an account, you are able to look at pattern instructions for any of the digital patterns that they have. Even before I bought it, if I felt like the instructions sucked, I wouldn't get it because I can look at the instructions, I could feel them out, I could make notes about where things need to be added or what I needed to do here or what I needed to do there, in addition to whatever it is that they had. In this video, I am going to give you all my pros, cons, thoughts, ins and outs of the Irene dress and if I think that it is worth buying. Spoiler alert, I think the finished product is beautiful. I love the dress even after making it. I ended up making it instead of a dress into a shirt. I didn't have as many buttons as I needed. I would say personally where I went wrong was my interfacing was not proper. So I should have got a lighter weight interfacing instead of the one I did, which kind of made the facing part kind of heavy. And that's completely on me. Also, my own mistake. I didn't measure what the collar would be, how tall it would be. And it was like right under my neck. Like I couldn't really go like this. But I had already sewn it on. And I have been waiting last minute to make things lately. And like with no wiggle room to really go back and fix things the way that I should be fixing things. So if I had time to go back and lower the collar just a touch, I would have because it was too tall for me. I guess that is my first, it's not a pro, it's not a con, neutral, just knowing your body measurements is what I would say. Measure the collar and make sure that it's not going to be too tall and too stiff for you so that you have some room to, put your chin down if you need to. And it doesn't feel like, it's not choking because it is loose, but it doesn't feel like it's hitting you in the throat. Another pro, because a lot of pattern companies, I feel like they haven't been doing this. And I don't know why, or some people are taking it out of their patterns, but they include the seam allowance. I hate when pattern companies don't, or even individuals, they don't include the seam allowance. Even if the seam allowance is just a half, I don't want to have to do the extra of measuring out whatever to put in seam allowance. So that's a pro. Another pro is that it includes all sizes. I truly, truly, truly dislike when pattern companies are not including all the size ranges into their pattern because maybe I'm not, a small full way. I have to, regardless, some people have to do full bust adjustments or hip adjustments or whatever the case may be, but it's always easier to go from size to size than to have to do a full adjustment. Maybe if I go a different size, I'll do half adjustment. I don't know. Nobody's one size. From hip to waist to bust to shoulder, like nobody's one size. And being able to go from small to medium or medium to extra large because you got wide hips and a small bust, especially in a dress, is helpful for everybody. I know it's helpful for me because for me, I was a medium in the bust and a small in the waist. The trial and error and going back and forth to figure out how much to take out and do it again and again and again waste more time than I could have just gone, okay, I need a small in the waist, a medium in the bust. Let me just draw the lines and the curves along the way before I cut it out. Another thing that I liked in the pattern was that it gives you a key for their pattern markings. Like it tells you when to cut for marking and when to use a needle and thread for marking. You use it for buttons or you snip in at notches, double notches, whatever the case may be. And I think that's smart because I learned this along the way, but not from a pattern, that some things should be marked with thread instead of using scissors or trying to go under it and mark it with a chalk or a marker or something. And it's simply just a lot easier to use a thread and pull it through, snip it off when you pull the pieces apart, and it's still there. And they don't like come out. I don't have to worry about it rubbing off because it's chalk, or I ironed it away because it's a heat erase pen. Even though I truly do like the dress and the finished product, there seemed to be more things that I didn't like about the process and the instructions than I did like, which I wasn't too happy about because, like I said, I was excited to sew this. I liked the dress. I didn't expect to not like the process that much, or not so much not like it, but that I would change as a sewer. So before we get to cons, if you get this, I'm just going to give you a few tips about things that I think you should change along the way or make note of. First, the instructions tell you what to interface and cut, kinda. You're not new to patterns, then you know that most patterns, especially commercial patterns, on the pattern piece, it gives you the pattern number and it tells you how many to cut off of fabric, of lining, of interfacing. So something I did was, once I realized that, before I cut anything out, I went through each piece and I labeled them. Cut to fabric, cut to lining, cut this facing, cut this interfacing. Because I didn't want to have to keep going back and looking to see how many of this was I supposed to do. So that would be something that I would tell you to do as well. Write on your pattern pieces how many of what thing you're supposed to cut out so that you have all your pieces. Number 2, you only need to interface one side of your collar. The only side you need to interface is the side that you do not fold. That you do not fold under. If you've ever made a collar or a waistband or a cuff, something, you know that there's one side that you fold under for whatever the allowance is that they tell you, and you press it and iron it. And there's one side that you don't. That is so that when you sew it back together, it covers that seam and you don't have to do any extra finagling, really. It's already pressed, it's already prepared and ready for you to go. I would tell you, only interface one side of the collar. So you cut out 2 pieces from the fabric and you cut out 1 for the interfacing, because having both sides interfaced is like, I know it's to get it to stand, right? But it was uncomfortable. I did it just to try to see, but it was too stiff. Like, it was under my neck. I didn't measure to make sure to bring it lower, and it was uncomfortable. My recommendation, I would say give it a test yourself first. If you make a mock of this, out of some kind of fabric that you may even wear, it's not the finished garment fabric, but it maybe is fabric that you may wear, try it. It probably will still stand up because the fabric is meant to be something that's a bit stiffer. It's not slouchy. Now, this next tip is very, very specific to a part in the instructions. So if you make it, try this instead. The pattern says when you sew your facing, you sew it, right sides together right here, and then you flip it out. Well, this edge is raw, and I believe that maybe they say don't do it because it's covered when you turn it back over and you do an understitch. Even in that, mine, it unravels quite a bit, and now maybe it's sewed, it is understitched, but it's only like 1/8 of an inch away from the stitching line. My recommendation would be to still give this an overlock on the inside before you press under and give it an understitch. Something else I would do if I were you is line it. Line it, line it, line it. Personally, I think most things need a lining. It does not require a lining. In the instructions, it does not say to line it. I guess it's not supposed to be lined, but especially depending on your fabric, I would say that you should indeed line this dress. Little detail that I do like is that they have you iron your hem, like prepare it to be done before you even sew all your pieces together. And someone like me who really is terrible at like making it all be straight, I don't know why, but I have hems are hard for me. So there's a notch on the dress at the bottom to know where to fold it and hem it, and you prepare that before you even sew all your pieces together. And I like that little detail. it is helpful for me. Okay, now we're getting into cons. Sometimes people just want to know the cons. It could be great, but what are the things that I should be looking for along the way that are like, I think the files have too much information. The file comes with a big AO version, normal, a home print letter A4 version, normal. But what this also has is two different files that include lines for cutting the pattern out and seam allowance, and one that just has lines for cutting the pattern out. I guess you add your own seam allowance. What I think on the file that has for both the seam allowance and the cut is that it's too much going on. I personally feel like it's too much going on. I think that if you're going to have a file that includes seam allowance, that you should remove the lines that are just sized lines for the dress without seam allowance. When you look at the whole full pieces, it's like it's a lot going on. It is already tough sometimes to decipher where your lines are for your size as opposed to another size, especially when we get to like armpits or parts in the neck or the facing where lines kind of begin to merge and it gets hairy. That could be the fix. It's okay to have a seam allowance only file and a cut only file where people add their own seam allowance, but in the one with the seam allowance, take the other lines off because it's too much. Along with this, for my next con is that the seam allowance given is only 3/8. I didn't realize that it was 3/8 until I started like cutting things out and getting ready to sew. And 3/8 is a very small seam allowance. Especially if you're sewing something fitted, there's no room for error. I will say that because this is not very fitted, this is a straight cut dress. It doesn't really snug a waist or a hip or nothing like that. Now, I'm not sure if that's all their seam allowances for all their garments. They make coats and pants and jackets and things like that. But if it is, it's like, ugh. I will be making this as a dress, so I will have to resend this pattern. That means that I'll have new measurements, which is fine. And as much as I hate doing the extra work to add the seam allowance in, I will probably be doing that. Another con is that for the belt loops, it does not tell you how long they should be. It says, press, fold, so, make a belt loop, right? And then it says to cut it into even parts. Well, the point of this is so I don't have to do the extra math. Measure it out and figure out how long they should be. And you also got to make sure that it goes around the width of the belt. So I made the tie. I didn't put the belt loops on. I just tied it around my waist because I didn't want to do all of that. Pro for the belt loops is that you do not mark where the belt loops go with a chalk or a marker. You use thread to mark the top and the bottom, and it stays the whole time you're sewing, obviously. And I think that is great because you don't have to go back and place it on top and remark again once you're done. Also, that's the same thing for the buttons. It does not tell you how far away each button should be from one another, and there is no like button markings on the dress or even the facing to say, hey, mark this here. This is where a button should go. This is where the buttonhole should go. It does tell you in the collar where the button should go. And then on the dress, it tells you where the top one should go and where the bottom one should go. And from there, you're supposed to figure it out. I don't like that. Tell me where the buttons go. Tell me where the buttonholes go so that I could just do it. I don't want to have to do the math and figure it out. I didn't draft this. I'm just following the instructions to get a finished product. It's like when you're baking and they just say, oh, add a little salt, put a splash of water in, put a little bit of baking powder. Like, I can't just put a little bit of baking powder. I can't just put a little bit of water because if it's not enough water, then it's not going to come out right. If it's too much water, it's going to be soupy. I believe that instructions should have all the instructions, just like if you're cooking. I mean, we are cooking. We cooking up garments, Another thing is that it does not tell you when to iron as you're sewing. It only tells you the pressing in the beginning for like the hem and iron the collar under. Making clothes is just as much ironing as it is sewing because if you don't press your seams properly, they don't look as crisp, and your garment doesn't look as good because now you just got this little floppy garment. And for me, it's fine because once I'm done sewing this side and this side and this, I know where to iron. But some people buy these patterns in the beginning when they're learning to sew. Most people in the beginning don't iron, or they don't think it's important. But ironing is just as important as sewing the right seam allowance. It can make your garment look good or not good. Sewing the facing to the front, and there's a part where you have to fold it under with the facing and the hem so that all of the hems match. It was a bit confusing in the beginning for me. I don't quite know how to give a solution for them to make it better because I don't like to present problems without presenting a solution. I don't think a straight beginner should try to make this because this I don't think has a video sew along. And while I will have a vlog style video of me sewing this, I don't have a step-by-step video to show you how to make this. Now, if enough people say they bought this dress, they want a video, they've been searching for answers for X, Y, and Z, because I do want to make it again, I am going to. I will do a step-by-step. Let me show you how to make this. It was a little tough for me on that end for like putting the facing on all together. I don't know if it was just me, if I was making it complicated. I would give this a 3.75 for this. And it's not because the finished garment, it's not because I don't like the dress, it's because I don't like maybe a 3.5. It's because there are so many things in the instructions that I believe could be better to make the experience of sewing this better. The instructions could be a bit more thorough. They're really just like at a glance how to make this. Yeah, I wanted to really like the whole thing about this. I wanted this to be a glowing review of this dress so bad. I gotta be honest. I gotta be honest. I don't think that it'll be terrible to make. I still say go for it if you like it. I try not to recommend patterns or things that are limited in sizing, or you just have to buy one size because it's just not realistic. And I think that pattern makers and pattern companies who do that should take a look at themselves. Really test their patterns on regular people instead of the model. People look at me and go, I'm small, but even I have to adjust between sizes. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more sewing videos, reviews, and some fun stuff I got coming up in my brain. There will be a vlog for this, but I'm almost certain that this will be out before the vlog. I will see you next time. Okay, bye.